Little girl, beaten into a coma by her gambling mother. A mountain man saw and did this. The wind came down from the high peaks like something hungry. Cole Mercer rode with his shoulders hunched and his hat pulled low, letting his horse pick the way through the loose rock. Behind him, the last of the cattle had been delivered 2 days back. His pockets held pay he had earned the hard way, through weeks of dust, cold nights, and the kind of work that left a man too tired to think. That was the point, really. When his body ached, his mind stayed quiet. But not tonight. Tonight, the mountains felt too still beneath the rising wind, and stillness always brought William back. Cole could still see his brother's face if he let himself. Young, grinning, full of the kind of hope that Cole had lost somewhere along the way. William had trusted him, followed him, and Cole had led him straight into a place no man walks away from. He shook the thought loose like snow off his coat. "Easy," he murmured to the horse. The animal's ears flicked back, listening. The old mining trail was a fool's shortcut, and Cole knew it. Nobody used it anymore. The mine had gone dry years ago, and the path had half crumbled into the mountainside. But the storm was coming fast, and this trail would shave 2 hours off the ride home. 2 hours less of cold, 2 hours less of remembering. Before you continue listening, please let me know where in the world are you watching from today. Now back to the story. The first flakes began to fall. Small at first, then thick and fast, spinning sideways in the gusts. Within minutes the world turned gray and white, the trail ahead fading into a blur. Cole tugged his collar tighter. He had been through worse. He would get home. He always did. Then he heard it. A sound beneath the wind, thin, broken. He pulled the horse to a stop and sat still, listening hard. The wind moaned through the rocks and old timber of the dead mine. That was all. Just the wind. "The mountains have taught you to hear ghosts," he told himself. "Keep moving." He nudged the horse forward. There it was again. A cry. Small and weak, like a wounded thing that had nearly given up. Cole's chest went tight. He knew that sound. He had heard it on battlefields, in the throats of men too broken to shout for help. It was the sound a body made when it was running out of time. "Whoa!" He swung down from the saddle, boots crunching into fresh snow. "Hello!" he called into the storm. His voice vanished almost the moment it left him. "Anybody out here?" the cry answered. Off to the left, near the edge of the trail where the ground dropped away into shadow. Cole moved toward it, brushing snow from his eyes, heart hammering in a way it had not done in years. He climbed over a fallen log, boots sinking deep, and then he saw her. A child. A little girl lay crumpled against the base of a boulder, half buried in the falling snow. Her dress was torn and thin, far too thin for a night like this. One small arm was flung out, as if she had been trying to crawl. Her dark hair was matted, and even in the dim light Cole could see the bruises. Dark marks along her cheek, her jaw, her arms. "No," he breathed. "No, no, no." He dropped to his knees beside her and pressed 2 fingers to her throat. A pulse fluttered there, faint as a moth's wing. She was breathing, but barely. Her lips had gone blue at the edges. Something glinted in the snow near her open hand. Cole picked it up. A small wooden disc, broken clean in half. A gambling token. The kind used in the halls down in the valley, where men lost their fortunes and their souls, one hand at a time. He stared at it a long moment. Then he closed his fist around it. Someone had done this to her. Someone had beaten this little girl and left her here to die in the cold, alone, like she was nothing. A slow, deep anger rose in him, steady as the mountain itself. Cole shrugged off his heavy coat and wrapped her small body inside it. She weighed almost nothing. Her head lolled against his chest as he lifted her, careful as he could be. "I've got you," he said, his voice rough. "You hear me? I've got you now. You're not gonna die out here. Not alone. Not like this. He turned back toward his horse, the snow swirling around them both, and started walking. The horse understood before Cole did. It stood waiting, head low against the wind, and when he came near, it did not shy from the bundle in his arms. Cole climbed into the saddle one-handed, holding the child tight against his chest. "Home," he said. "Take us home." The animal turned into the storm. The world had gone white. There was no trail now, only shapes half seen through the swirling snow. Cole trusted the horse to find the way it had walked 1,000 times. He wrapped both arms around the little girl and bent low over her, giving her what warmth his body still had. She was so light, so terribly light. That was the thing that undid him, the weight of her, or the lack of it. It brought the memory rushing back like the wind through the pass. William. His brother had been light like this at the end too. Cole had carried him 3 miles across broken ground with bullets in the air, telling him the whole way to hold on. Just hold on. Help was coming. He remembered the exact moment the weight changed. The moment William stopped fighting. 1 second, his brother had been a person clinging to life, and the next, he was only a body Cole could not put down. "Not again," Cole said aloud, the words torn from him. "Do you hear me?" Not again. He pressed his cheek to the top of the girl's head. She was still breathing. He could feel the small shudder of it against his chest. As long as she breathed, there was time. As long as there was time, he would not stop. The snow bit at his face. His hands went numb inside his gloves. His whole body screamed for warmth, but he only pulled the child closer and kept his eyes on the dark shapes of the trees. "You keep breathing," he told her. "That's your only job. You just keep breathing, and I'll do the rest. I promise you that." He had made a promise like that once before. He had failed to keep it. The memory sat like a stone in his chest, and he carried it the way he carried the girl, all the long cold miles down the mountain. Then, at last, through the blowing snow, a shape he knew. The low, dark line of his ranch house, the barn beyond it, home. Cole nearly wept. He rode straight to the door, half fell from the saddle, and stumbled inside with the child in his arms. The fire had burned down to coals during his weeks away, but the room still held a little of yesterday's heat from his single night back. He laid her down close to the hearth on the braided rug, then threw wood on the coals and blew until the flames caught and climbed. Light bloomed across her small face. In it, the bruises looked even worse. Purple and yellow along her jaw, her cheek swollen, a cut above her eye crusted with old blood. Cole's jaw tightened. He tucked blankets around her, all of them, everything he owned. Then he was moving again, out to the barn, onto a fresh horse, riding hard through the storm to the cabin 2 miles east, where old Martha Bell lived alone with her herbs and her wisdom. He pounded on her door until it opened, and the words came out in a rush. "A child, beaten, half froze. She's barely breathing, Martha. Please." The old woman did not waste breath on questions. She grabbed her bag and her heavy shawl and climbed up behind him. Back at the ranch, Martha knelt beside the girl and worked in silence. Her old hands moved gentle and sure, feeling along ribs, lifting eyelids, pressing an ear to the small chest. Cole stood behind her with his hat crushed in his fists, unable to breathe. When Martha finally sat back, her face was grave. "She's alive," Martha said quietly. "But she's gone somewhere deep inside herself, Cole. The cold, the beating, both together. A body does that to protect itself." She looked up at him, her eyes soft and sad. "I'll do all I know how to do, but I won't lie to you. She may not wake. You should be ready for that." Cole shook his head slowly. "No." "Cole." "No," he said again, and pulled a chair to the bedside where they had moved her. He sat down heavily, leaned forward, and took the child's cold small hand in his rough ones. "I'm not leaving her. he said. Not for a minute. Not tonight. Not any night. You hear me? Martha looked at him a long moment. Then she nodded and set about her work. And Cole stayed. Through all the long dark hours, while the storm howled against the walls, and the fire burned low and was fed again, he sat beside the little girl and held her hand and would not let go. Morning came gray and cold. The storm had passed, leaving the world buried in white silence. Cole had not slept. His eyes burned, and his back ached from bending over the chair all night. But the girl still breathed. Slow and shallow, but steady. That was enough to keep him going. Martha stirred by the fire where she had dozed a few hours. She rose stiffly and came to check the child, pressing the back of her hand to the small forehead. "Fever's holding low," Martha said. "That's good. It means her body is fighting." She looked at Cole. But fighting is all she can do right now. She needs warmth. She needs quiet. And she needs time. Days, maybe weeks. I can't say when she'll wake. Or if she'll wake the same girl she was. Cole rubbed a hand down his tired face. "What do I do?" "You keep her warm. You keep her fed with broth when she'll take it. And you wait." Martha's gray eyes softened. "You're good at holding on, Cole Mercer. I saw that last night. But holding on won't be enough by itself. You'll need help. Send for the doctor. Whatever hurt is inside her, past my herbs, he'll know better than I do." Cole nodded. He stood, and his legs nearly buckled from the long hours in the chair. "I'll go now," he said. "You stay with her?" "I'm not going anywhere." Cole pulled on his coat, still stiff and damp from the night before. He looked back once at the little girl lying so small and still beneath his blankets. Then he stepped out into the blinding morning and saddled a fresh horse. The ride into town took an hour through snow that reached the horse's knees. The place sat quiet in the cold, smoke rising thin from a few chimneys. Cole rode straight to the doctor's house at the edge of Main Street and pounded on the door. Dr. Pell answered in his shirt sleeves. He was a thin man with careful eyes, and the moment he saw Cole's face, something in him went still. "There's a child at my ranch," Cole said. "Beaten near to death and left in the snow. She needs you. Now." The doctor's gaze dropped. He would not look at Cole. "I can't," he said. "Not today. Not out that far." "She's a child," Cole said. "She may die." "I'm sorry." The words came out thin, and then, quieter, almost a whisper. "Is it the Whitmore girl?" Cole went cold in a way that had nothing to do with the weather. "You know her." The doctor said nothing. He closed the door. Cole stood there a long moment, staring at the wood. Then he turned and walked into the heart of town. He asked at the store. He asked at the church. He asked the men gathered outside the feed shop, blowing warmth into their hands. And everywhere he went, he saw the same thing. The dropped eyes, the turned shoulders, the mouths that closed tight the moment he said the girl's name. "Ava Whitmore," Cole said, louder now, standing in the middle of the street. "Somebody in this town knows what happened to that child. Somebody heard her. Somebody saw." A woman clutched her shawl and hurried past. A man stepped back into a doorway. Finally, an old fellow by the water trough spoke up, low and shamed. "Her mama's Clara Whitmore," he said. "Gambling woman. Owes money all over this valley. Owes it to folks you don't cross." He glanced around, nervous. "Everybody knows how she treats that girl. We've all heard the crying. But a body keeps quiet. You speak up against Clara. You're speaking up against them she owes. And nobody wants that trouble." "So you let it happen," Cole said. "All of you. You heard a little girl crying, and you shut your doors." The old man looked at his boots. Cole stared around at the silent street, at the faces that would not meet his. His hands curled into fists at his sides. The anger rose in him hot and terrible, but under it was something colder. A knowing. Nobody here would help him. Nobody here would speak. He mounted his horse without another word and turned it back toward the mountain, toward the ranch, toward the child who was counting on him alone. And with every step of that long ride home, one thought hardened in his chest like iron. He would find the truth himself. The days ran together after that. Cole learned the shape of them without meaning to. Wake before the sun. Build up the fire. Sit beside the small bed while Martha slept, and watch the girl breathe. There was a rhythm to it, the way there was a rhythm to feeding cattle or mending fence. But this was different. This mattered in a way nothing had mattered for a long time. He spooned broth between her cracked lips when she stirred, careful as a man handling a bird's egg. Most of it dribbled down her chin. Some of it went down. Martha said even a little was a victory. "There!" the old woman murmured one gray afternoon, dabbing the girl's mouth with a cloth. "That's it, child. Just a little more." Ava did not wake, but sometimes her fingers twitched against the blanket, and once, in the deep of night, she made a small sound. Not a word, just a breath with a shape to it. Cole leaned close, his heart pounding, but she went still again. He found himself talking to her. He did not know why. He told her about the horses in the barn, about the storm that had passed, about the way the mountains looked when the snow turned gold at sunset. He told her things he had never told a living soul. His voice was low and rough, and the words came easier in the dark, spoken to a child who could not hear them. "You just keep fighting," he told her. "You hear me? You keep fighting, and I'll be right here." He did not let himself think about what he was doing, about the way he watched the door of that little room when he was out in the barn, about the way his chest went tight every time her breathing slowed. He had promised himself years ago that he would never again let anyone climb inside him like this. Loving someone was just standing at the edge of a cliff, waiting to fall. But he could not stop. Martha saw it. She always saw everything. "You've grown fond of her," she said one morning, stirring a pot of oats. Cole did not answer. "There's no shame in it," she went on. "A body isn't made of stone. Not even yours, Cole Mercer, hard as you try." He looked at the girl's sleeping face, so small, so bruised. "If she dies," he said quietly, "I don't know what I'll do." "Then we'll make sure she doesn't." Martha handed him a bowl. "But she needs more than broth and prayers. She's got no clothes here, no comfort of her own. A child heals better with something familiar near. I want to ride down to that house of hers, see what's there." So the next afternoon, while a neighbor woman Martha trusted sat with Ava, the two of them rode down the mountain to the sad little cabin where Clara Whitmore had lived with her daughter. The place was worse than Cole imagined. A crooked door hanging loose on its hinges, cold ash in the hearth, a single broken chair. It smelled of whiskey and neglect, and something in Cole's stomach turned at the thought of a child growing up inside these walls. "Lord have mercy," Martha whispered. They gathered what little there was. A thin dress, a wooden doll with the paint worn off its face, a pair of shoes so small they made Cole's throat close up. Then Martha, kneeling by the narrow bed in the corner, went still. "Cole." Her voice was strange. "Come here." He crossed the room. Martha had lifted the edge of the thin, lumpy mattress. Beneath it, tucked deep where no grown hand would think to look, lay a small leather book. Its cover was soft with handling, the corners frayed. A length of twine held it closed. Martha lifted it out with trembling fingers and untied the knot. She opened to the first page. Then the next. Her hand rose slowly to cover her mouth. Cole leaned over her shoulder, and what he saw stole the breath from his chest. Page after page, filled with a child's careful, crooked handwriting. Dates, words, line after line after line. She wrote it down, Martha whispered. All of it. Every last bit of it. They rode back up the mountain in silence, the little journal tucked inside Cole's coat, pressed close to his chest like something living. He could feel the edges of it against his ribs the whole way. When they got home, and the neighbor woman had gone, when Ava was breathing slow and steady in her small bed, Cole and Martha sat down at the rough wooden table by the fire. Martha set the book between them. Neither of them touched it for a long moment. "Go on," Martha said. "You read it. My eyes aren't what they were." Cole's hands were not steady. That surprised him. They had been steady through war, through the long nights on the cattle drive, through the storm that near froze him solid. But now they trembled as he opened the soft leather cover and turned to the first page. The handwriting was a child's, round and careful, some words spelled wrong, but the meaning came through clear as spring water. "Today, Mama did not come home," Cole read, his voice low. "I ate the last bread. There was mold on it, but I scraped it off. I am not scared of the dark anymore. I am used to it now." He stopped. The fire popped. Martha said nothing, but her eyes shone wet in the light. He turned the page. "Mama came home mad. She said it was my fault the money is gone. She hit me 2 times. I did not cry because crying makes it worse. I counted to 100 instead. That is what I do." Cole set the book down for a moment. He pressed his hand flat against the page, as if he could reach through it and pull the little girl out of those words. His jaw worked. He picked it up again. Page after page it went. A child alone, a child hungry, a child learning the way a soldier learns, exactly how to survive. She wrote about which floorboards creaked so she could stay quiet. She wrote about hiding under the bed. She wrote about a night so cold she thought her fingers would break, and how she wrapped the old doll in her one blanket so the doll would not be cold too. She was taking care of the doll, Cole said, and his voice cracked right down the middle. There wasn't a soul on earth taking care of her, and she was worried about the doll. Martha reached across the table and gripped his wrist. Her old hand was warm and strong. "Keep going," she whispered. "She needs somebody to hear it. Even now. Even late." So Cole kept going. There were softer pages too, and somehow those hurt worse. A page where Ava wrote that Mama had smiled at her once, and it felt like sunshine. A page where she wrote, "Mama promised she would stop. She swore on Papa's grave. I believe her. I have to believe her." A page where she made a list of things she wanted for when she grew up. A little house, a garden, a dog that would sleep on her feet, a person who would say good morning to her when she woke up. Cole had to stop again. He rubbed his face with both hands, hard. "How does a town let this happen?" he said. It was not a question. It was something closer to a wound. How many folks walked past that cabin? How many heard her? And they just kept walking. "Fear makes people small," Martha said quietly. "It makes them look at their own feet." Cole did not answer. He turned another page, and then his eyes stopped moving. He read the words once, then again slower, to be sure he was not making them up in his own tired mind. "The kind man with the silver buckle told Mama to stop hurting me. He got down on his knees so he was the same size as me. He said I was a good girl. He said it was not my fault. Nobody ever said that before. I hope he comes back. I think about him. He had a silver buckle shaped like a horse." Cole sat very still. "Martha." His voice was rough. Somebody knew. He looked up, and the firelight caught the hard shine in his eyes. Somebody else knew what was happening to her. Long before I ever found her on that trail. His hand pressed flat against the page. Somebody looked at that little girl and told her she mattered. And then they walked away. He stared into the fire, the question burning slow inside him. Who was he? And why, in God's name, had he left her there? The next morning, Cole rode into town before the sun had fully cleared the ridge. The streets were quiet. A few folks moved about, sweeping porches, hauling water, keeping their eyes down the way people do when they carry secrets. Cole watched them all. He was looking for one thing: a silver buckle shaped like a horse. He started at the general store. The old shopkeeper eyed him but said nothing helpful. Cole asked about a man who wore a buckle like that. The shopkeeper only shrugged and busied himself with a crate of nails. Cole moved on. He asked at the feedlot. He asked a boy watering horses at the trough. He got the same answer each time. Shrugs, turned heads, silence that pressed down heavy as a wet quilt. But Cole had tracked wolves through snow with less to go on than this. He kept looking. It was the sound that led him. A steady ringing, metal on metal, the clang of a hammer against an anvil, ringing out over the morning like a bell that never quite finished its song. Cole followed it to the far end of the street, where a low building sat with its wide doors thrown open. Smoke curled from a stone chimney. Heat rolled out from inside, and with it came the smell of coal and hot iron. The blacksmith stood at his anvil, broad shoulders bent to his work. He was a big man, thick through the arms, with a leather apron scorched black from years of sparks. His hair was gray at the temples. His face was kind, though it wore the tired look of a man who slept poorly. Cole stepped into the doorway. His eyes dropped to the man's waist. There it was, a silver buckle, shaped like a horse. Cole did not move for a moment. He just stood, blocking the light, until the blacksmith felt him there and looked up. "Help you with something?" the man asked. His voice was deep and easy. "You're Henry Dawson," Cole said. It was not a question. The blacksmith set his hammer down slow. "I am. And you're the fellow that took in the Whitmore girl. Word travels." He wiped his hands on a rag. "How is she?" "Alive," Cole said. "Barely." Something crossed Henry's face then. A flinch, quick as a spark off the anvil. He looked away, down at his own hands. Cole stepped closer. He reached into his coat and pulled out the little journal. He did not open it. He just held it up. "She wrote about you," Cole said. "The kind man with the silver buckle. The one who got down on his knees so he'd be her size. The one who told her it wasn't her fault." His voice was steady now, but there was fire under it. "She hoped you'd come back, Henry. She thought about you, and you never came." The rag slipped from Henry's fingers and fell to the dirt floor. For a long moment the big man said nothing. His shoulders, so broad and strong, seemed to fold inward. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost all its ease. "I tried," Henry said. "God is my witness, I tried." He pressed the heel of his hand against his eyes. "I saw the bruises on that child months back. She came in with her mama to get a pot mended. I got down and I talked to her. I told Clara to her face to stop. I said I'd tell the sheriff. I said I'd tell anybody who'd listen." "Then why didn't you?" Cole said. Henry laughed, but there was no joy in it. It was a broken, bitter sound. "Because the next week a man came to my shop. Real polite, real quiet. He reminded me I owed money on this forge, on the very anvil I'm standing at." He swallowed hard. He said accidents happen to folks who stick their nose where it don't belong. Said Clara would swear I was the one hurting her family. And this town would believe it. Cole's jaw tightened. "Who sent him?" Henry looked up, and his eyes were full of shame and something close to fear. "Elias Voss," he said. "The banker. He owns the gambling houses, mister. He owns Clara's debt. He owns half the debt in this whole valley. Every family that's drowning, he's the one holding them under, nice and slow." Henry's voice dropped low. "Nobody crosses him, because everybody owes him something." The Whitmore place sat at the edge of town, past the church and the graveyard, where the good land gave way to weeds and hard clay. It was a small house, gray and leaning, with a broken step and a window patched with an old flour sack. a place where hope had packed up and left long ago. Cole tied his horse to the fence and stood a moment, looking at it. This was where Ava had lived. This was where she had gone hungry and afraid. He felt his hands curl into fists at his sides, and he made himself open them again. He knocked once. The door was thin under his knuckles. No answer came. But he heard something move inside. A shuffle, the scrape of a chair. "Clara Whitmore," Cole said. "Open the door. I'm not leaving." A long silence. Then the latch lifted. The woman who stood there looked older than her years. Her hair hung loose and tangled around a face that had once been pretty. Her eyes were red and sunken. She wore a dress that had not been washed in some time, and she smelled of whiskey and old smoke. She looked at Cole the way a beaten dog looks at a raised hand. "You're him," she whispered. "The rancher. The one that took her." "I am." Clara's chin trembled. Is she dead?" "No, thanks to you," Cole said. His voice was low and hard as Riverstone. "She's lying in my house right now. She hasn't opened her eyes in 3 days. A girl of 9, beaten so bad her own mama left her in the snow to die." Clara's face crumpled. She stepped back, and Cole followed her inside. The room was bare and cold. A bottle sat on the table. A deck of worn cards lay scattered beside it. "I need to hear it from you," Cole said. "I need to know why. Why a mother would do that to her own child." For a moment Clara said nothing. She sank into the chair and stared at her own hands as though they belonged to a stranger. "You think I don't ask myself that?" she said. Her voice broke. "Every hour, every minute. I see her face and I can't breathe." "That's not an answer." Clara pressed her fists against her mouth. When she pulled them away, the truth came pouring out of her like water through a broken dam. "I lost everything," she said. "The last of it. The money her daddy left us when he passed. I told myself I'd win it back. I always told myself that. Just one more hand. Just one more night." She was shaking now. "I came home with nothing. Not a cent. And Ava, she just looked at me. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just looked at me with those eyes. And I saw everything I'd become in them. Everything I hated." She began to sob, ugly and raw. "And I couldn't stand it. So I hit her. I hit my own baby because I couldn't stand to see myself in her." She rocked back and forth. "I don't even remember stopping. I don't remember carrying her out. God help me. I don't remember." Cole stood very still. He wanted to be angry. He was angry. But there was something else in the room now. Something too broken to hate cleanly. "Why gamble at all?" he said. "Why keep going back when it was killing you both?" Clara looked up at him, and now her fear was different, sharper. "Because I couldn't stop," she said. "Because he wouldn't let me stop." She glanced at the door, at the window, as if the walls themselves might be listening. "The debt. It's never paid, mister. It only grows. Every time you owe him, he owns a little more of you." "Him," Cole said. "You mean Voss." Clara went pale at the name. "Elias Voss owns those gambling houses. Every one of them. He owns this whole valley, only nobody says it out loud." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "He gives you the loan with a smile. Then he holds it over your head till you do anything. Anything at all. That's how he keeps folks quiet." She wiped her face with a trembling hand. "You want to save my girl?" she said. "Then you'd best understand. You're not fighting me. You're fighting him. And he's got the whole town in his pocket." Cole felt the weight of it settle over him, heavy and cold. This was bigger than one broken family, far bigger. The morning came soft and gray over the mountains. Frost lined the window of the small room where Ava lay, and the light fell pale across her thin face. Cole sat in the wooden chair beside her bed, the same as he had every morning for weeks now. His coffee had gone cold in his hands. He had stopped noticing. He had spent his days riding into town, asking quiet questions, listening at the edges of conversations. He had learned much about Elias Voss. He had learned who owed him and who feared him. He had filled a notebook with names and numbers, piecing together the web the banker had woven across the valley. But his nights and his mornings belonged to the girl. Martha had shown him how to spoon broth past her lips, how to keep the fever down with cool cloths, how to turn her gently so her skin would not sore. He had never done such things in his life. His hands, made for rope and rifle and hard work, had learned to be soft. "Come on now," he murmured, the way he did every morning. "Time to wake up. Sun's out." "Well, near enough." He did not expect an answer. He never got one. But this morning her hand moved. It was small, just a twitch of her fingers against the quilt. Cole leaned forward, his heart climbing into his throat. He set the cold coffee on the floor and took her little hand in his big one. "Ava," he said. "Ava, can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered. Then they opened. For a long moment she only stared at the ceiling, her eyes glassy and lost. Then they moved to him. And Cole watched something terrible happen. He watched fear flood into a child's face like water rising in a well. She jerked her hand back. She pressed herself into the corner of the bed, drawing her knees up, small and trembling. Her breath came fast and shallow. "Please," she whispered. Her voice was a cracked thread of sound. "Please don't. I'll be good. I'll be quiet. I promise I'll be quiet." Cole's chest split open at the words. He did not move. He stayed exactly where he was, his hands open in his lap, so she could see they held nothing. "Nobody's going to hurt you," he said. His voice came out rougher than he meant it to. He softened it. "You hear me, darlin'? Nobody. Not here." Her eyes darted around the room, to the door, to the window, looking for the danger she had always known was coming. Her whole body was braced for a blow, tensed the way a rabbit tenses before it bolts. "Where's Mama?" she breathed. It was not a question a child should have to ask with such fear. "You're safe," Cole said. "That's all you need to know right now. You're safe, and you're warm, and you're going to stay that way." He reached down slow, real slow, and picked up the wool blanket that had slid to the floor. He held it out to her, not close, just enough for her to see. "You cold?" he asked. "This here's a good blanket. Martha made it. She's been sitting with you too. You've had folks watching over you, Ava." "Good folks." Ava stared at him. Her lower lip trembled. Tears spilled over and ran down her hollow cheeks, and she did not wipe them away. "You're not mad," she whispered. The questionnaire broke him in two. He thought of every time this child had woken to anger. Every morning she had opened her eyes wondering what she had done wrong. He had to swallow hard before he could speak. "No," Cole said. "I'm not mad. I couldn't be mad at you if I tried, and I wouldn't try." He set the blanket gently across her feet. "My name's Cole. I found you out on the trail. I brought you home, and this is home now, for as long as you want it to be." Ava looked at the blanket, then at him. Something in her small shoulders loosened, just the smallest bit. "You're safe," Cole said again, soft as he knew how. "I promise you that. And I don't make promises I don't aim to keep." The days that followed were not easy. Cole had spent his whole life knowing what to do with his hands. He knew how to break a wild horse, and mend a fence, and read the weather in the color of the sky. But a child was a different thing altogether. A child could not be roped or corralled or taught with a firm word. A child had to be won, slow and careful, like the trust of a frightened animal. Ava barely spoke those first days. She ate what he set before her, but only after she thought he was not looking. She flinched when he moved too quick. She watched his hands the way a person watches a storm cloud, waiting for it to break. Cole learned to move slow. He learned to talk low, to keep his voice level, even when his heart was pounding with worry that he was doing it all wrong. He did not know if he was helping her or scaring her worse. He only knew he would keep trying. "You want to see the horses?" he asked one bright cold morning. He had asked before, and she had only shaken her head. But this time, she looked up from her plate. She thought about it a long while. Then she nodded. Small. Cole felt like he'd struck gold. He wrapped her in Martha's wool blanket and carried her out to the barn, for she was still too weak to walk far. The air was sharp and clean, and smelled of hay and horse and wood smoke. Ava's eyes went wide at the big animals in their stalls, at the steam rising from their nostrils, at the soft dark eyes that turned to look at her. "That one's Biscuit," Cole said, nodding at an old, gentle mare. "She's the kindest thing on 4 legs. Wouldn't hurt a fly. You want to touch her?" Ava shook her head fast. "That's all right," Cole said easy. "No rush. She'll be here tomorrow. And the day after that." Each morning after, he brought her to the barn. Each morning she came a little closer to the stalls. He taught her how to hold out a flat hand with a bit of apple on it, how to let Biscuit's soft lips lift it away. The first time the mare's whiskers tickled her palm, Ava snatched her hand back, but she did not cry, and the next day she tried again. He taught her small things, how to brush a horse's coat in long, slow strokes, how to carry a bucket without spilling, how to whistle for the barn cat that came running for scraps. And in the quiet work of those days, something began to change in her. She began to walk a little straighter. She began to answer his questions with more than a nod. At night, when the bad dreams came and she cried out in the dark, Cole was there. He learned to sit by her bed and speak soft until the shaking stopped. He learned that she liked when he told her about the mountains, about the elk and the eagles, and the way the aspens turned gold in the fall. He did not know if he was any good at it, but she stopped waking so often. That was answer enough. Then came the morning he lifted her onto Biscuit's back. She had grown strong enough to stand now, strong enough to want more than watching. Cole settled her small frame into the saddle and held the reins himself, walking beside her, one big hand resting steady on her leg so she would know he would not let her fall. "I've got you," he said. "I won't let go. You just sit tall and feel her move." Biscuit ambled forward into the yard, slow and gentle as a summer creek. Ava gripped the saddle horn, her knuckles white. Then, as the mare's easy rhythm rocked her along, something loosened in the girl. Her grip eased, her back straightened. The morning sun caught her face. And then it happened. Ava laughed. It burst out of her sudden and bright. A real laugh, high and clear as a bell across the frosty yard. She laughed at the sway of the horse, at the wind in her hair, at the pure, wide-open feel of being alive and safe and free. Cole stopped walking. He stood there in the cold, with his hand on her leg and the reins in his fist, and he looked up at that laughing child, and something inside him cracked wide open and let the light in. He had told himself he was her protector, just a man who found a girl and did the right thing. But standing there, watching her laugh in the sunlight, he understood it was more than that. It had been more than that for a while now. Somewhere in the long, quiet days, without meaning to, without ever believing he could, he had started to become her father. Word of the girl at Mercer's ranch spread through the valley the way it always did, carried on the wind from one kitchen to the next. And slow, one at a time, people began to come. The first was a woman named Ruth Ellery. She drove up in a rickety wagon on a gray afternoon, a basket of fresh bread balanced on her knees. She stood at the edge of the porch a long time before she found her voice, twisting the corner of her shawl in her fingers. "I heard her crying," Ruth said finally. Her eyes were wet and would not meet Cole's. "That night, and other nights before it. My house sits close enough to hear through the walls." She swallowed hard. I told myself it weren't my business. I told myself a lot of things. Cole did not say anything cruel. He had wanted to once. In those first furious days, he had wanted to shout at every soul in that town, to make them feel the shame of it. But standing there now, watching this trembling woman hold out her basket like an offering, he found the anger had gone quiet in him. "You're here now," he said. Ruth's face broke, and she wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. "Is she?" she started, then stopped. "Is she all right? The girl?" "She's getting there," Cole said. "Little by little." Ruth nodded, and left the bread and drove away. But she was only the first. The next day, it was old Samuel Hoke, who brought a sack of grain for the horses and stood with his hat crushed in his hands. Then it was the Purdy sisters with a jar of honey. Then a young couple with a quilt they'd stitched themselves. They came with small gifts and heavy hearts, and every one of them said some version of the same thing. "I knew. I should have done something. I'm sorry." Ava watched them from the window, half hidden behind the curtain, her small face solemn. Cole never pushed her to come out. But once, when Ruth came back a second time, Ava crept to the door on her own and stood beside Cole, and Ruth knelt right down in the frozen yard and wept. And Ava did not run. She just watched, thoughtful, the way she watched everything. "They feel bad," Ava told Cole later, at supper. "They do," Cole said. "Is that enough?" she asked. "Feeling bad?" Cole set down his fork. It was a hard question, honest as a knife, and he would not lie to her. "No," he said. "Not by itself. Feeling bad is just the start. What you do after, that's what matters." Ava thought about that. Then she nodded, as if he'd passed some test she'd set for him. It was Henry Dawson who changed everything. The blacksmith came on a Sunday, his broad shoulders hunched, and he did not bring a gift. He brought words instead. He sat at Cole's table with his big scarred hands wrapped around a cup of coffee, and he talked low so Ava would not hear. "You want to know why nobody spoke up?" Henry said. "It ain't just cowardice, though there's plenty of that." He turned the cup slow in his hands. "Most every family in this valley owes Elias Voss, me included." Cole leaned forward. "The banker." "The banker!" Henry gave a bitter laugh. "He loaned me money for my forge 3 years back. Fair terms," he said. "Only the terms kept changing, kept adding on. I've paid him back twice over, and I still owe more than I started with." He shook his head. "And I ain't alone. Half the town's the same. You cross Voss, he calls in your debt. You lose your house, your land, your livelihood. So folks keep their heads down. Even when they hear a little girl crying in the night." Cole felt something cold and clear settle in his chest. Others came after Henry, once word got round that Cole was listening. Samuel Hoke told of a loan that swallowed his farm's back 40. The young couple spoke of a debt that seemed to grow no matter how much they paid. Piece by piece, the picture came together. Cole found an old ledger book and began to write it all down. Every name, every dollar, every crooked thread that led back to one man. The ledger grew fat with names. Cole spent his evenings hunched over the kitchen table long after Ava had gone to sleep, the lamp burning low and steady beside him. He wrote in a careful hand, the way his mother had taught him as a boy, and he checked each figure twice. Numbers did not lie the way people did. Numbers, laid side by side, told a story all their own. But the names in his book were only half of it. He needed more. He needed proof a man could hold in his hand. So one cold morning, Cole rode into town. He did not go to the bank. He went to the places behind the bank, the alleys and back rooms, where a man learned the things nobody wrote on the front window. He talked to a drunk who used to keep books for one of the gambling halls before his hands got too shaky. He bought coffee for a stable boy who saw who came and went through the back doors after dark. He listened to a widow who ran a boarding house and knew everybody's secrets because secrets were half her business. And slow, the shape of the thing came clear. There were 3 gambling houses in the valley, one in town, tucked behind a saloon, 2 more scattered along the mining roads, in rough camps where lonely men lost their wages every payday. On paper, each house belonged to a different owner, a man named Kettering, a man named Boyd, a woman called Rosa, but every one of those owners banked with Elias Voss. And when Cole dug deeper, cross-checking what the drunk bookkeeper remembered against the names in his own ledger, he found the trick of it. Voss did not just take the money folks lost at his tables. That would have been simple greed, and simple greed a man could understand. No. Voss loaned people the money first. He was the bank. He gave a struggling farmer a loan for seed, for tools, for a new roof before winter. Then, when that same farmer sat down at a card table with borrowed dollars in his pocket, the house took it back. And the debt to the bank remained. The money went in a circle. Out through the loan, across the gambling table, back into Voss's pockets. And every trip around that circle, the family sank a little deeper. Cole sat in the widow's boarding house parlor with all of it spread before him, and he felt sick. "He owns both ends," he said aloud, more to himself than to her. The widow nodded grimly. "The rope and the hangman both, honey." Cole rode home in the dark, with the wind cutting at his face, and he could not shake the cold weight of what he'd learned. It was not chance that trapped these people. It was not weakness or bad luck. It was a machine, built careful and cruel, designed from the first turn of the wheel to grind down the desperate and keep them grinding. He thought of Clara Whitmore, gambling away the last of her savings. He had blamed her, and part of him blamed her still. But he saw now that she had been fed into the same machine as everyone else. Voss had wanted her to lose. Voss had needed her to lose. A woman drowning in debt was a woman who could be controlled, and a woman who could be controlled would keep her mouth shut when the debt collectors came calling. And Ava had paid the price for all of it. A little girl beaten near to death, and the true hand that set it in motion sat behind a polished desk with clean fingernails and a kind smile. Back at the ranch, Cole lit the lamp and opened his ledger one final time. He laid out the pieces the way the widow and the bookkeeper and the stable boy had given them to him. He drew lines connecting the loans to the gambling houses back to the bank. He wrote down dates and figures until the whole rotten design lay plain on the page, clear enough that even a stubborn, frightened town would have to see it. When he finished, he sat back and looked at what he had made. It was enough. It was proof. The truth was on paper now, and paper did not stay silent. Come morning, Cole would take it into the light. Word travels fast in a small town. Cole should have known that. By the time the sun rose the next morning, Elias Voss already knew. He had ears in the alleys, same as Cole had gone looking for. The stable boy owed him money. The widow's boarding house sat on land the bank held the note on. Voss had spent years planting his roots deep, and roots like that felt every footstep pressing down on the soil above. So while Cole slept, believing his proof was safe, Voss sat in his office and folded his clean hands together and began to think. He did not panic. Men like Voss did not panic. He simply reached for the tool he understood best. Not a gun, not a fist, a story. By mid-morning, the story was moving through town like smoke under a door. It started at the Mercantile, where Voss stopped in to buy tobacco he did not need. He spoke low and sorrowful to the shopkeeper, shaking his head. "Terrible business," he said. "That poor Clara Whitmore. Sick with worry she is. Some mountain man rode down and took her little girl right off her land. Won't give the child back. Clara's afraid to say a word for fear of what he'll do." The shopkeeper's eyes went wide. "The Mercer fella? I only know what I hear. Voss said gently, which was the cruelest way to tell a lie. But a man who lives alone up in those hills, taking a child nobody can check on. It troubles me. It surely does. And that was all it took. By noon, the tale had grown legs. Cole Mercer had stolen Ava. Cole Mercer had lured her away. Cole Mercer, a soldier who'd killed men, who kept to himself, who nobody really knew. Folks who had turned their faces from Ava's crying for months now clucked their tongues and said they'd always thought something was strange about that rancher. It was easier, after all, to believe a lie about a stranger than to sit with the truth about themselves. The truth, meanwhile, was that Cole was teaching Ava how to hold the reins. He did not know any of it. He stood in the corral under a pale winter sun, one hand steady on the old mare's flank, watching Ava sit tall in the saddle for the first time. Her small fingers gripped the leather too tight, and her shoulders were stiff with worry, but she was doing it. She was up there. "Loosen your hands, sweetheart," Cole said. "She can feel you're scared. Show her you trust her, and she'll trust you back." Ava let out a breath. Her fingers eased, and a smile broke across her face, small and bright. The kind of smile that had been buried so long Cole felt his throat go tight, just seeing it. "Look at you," he murmured. "Look at you go." For one clean moment, everything was right in the world. Then he heard the horses. Cole turned. 3 riders came up the trail from town, moving steady and grim. He knew the shape at the front before he could see the face. Sheriff Thomas Reed sat his horse the way a man sits when he'd rather be anywhere else. His hat pulled low and his mouth set in a hard line. Cole's gut went cold. "Ava," he said quiet. "Climb down now. Go on inside to Martha." She caught the change in his voice, the way frightened children always do. She slid from the saddle and stood pressed against his leg, staring at the men. Reed reined up at the corral fence and did not dismount right away. He looked at Cole a long moment, and there was something apologetic buried under the duty in his eyes. "Cole," he said, "I need you to come with me." "On what charge?" "Kidnapping." Reed swallowed. "Clara Whitmore says you took her girl. Half the town's saying it now. That's a lie. And you know it's a lie." Cole kept his voice level, but his hand found Ava's shoulder. "Voss put you up to this." "Maybe he did." Reed climbed down, slow. "But I got no proof of that. And I got a mother claiming her child was stolen. I can't ignore it. You know I can't." Ava's fingers dug into Cole's sleeve. "No," she whispered. "No, don't take him, please." Cole knelt down fast, taking her face in his rough hands. "Hey, look at me. Look right at me." His voice cracked, but held. "I am coming back. You hear me? This is a mistake, and I am going to fix it. Nobody is taking you anywhere. Martha's here. You stay with Martha." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "You promise?" "I promise." He pressed his forehead to hers. "I promise you." Then the deputy stepped forward with the irons, and Reed said, low and heavy, "I'm sorry, Cole." They led him away from the corral, away from the ranch, and Ava stood in the cold with the mare, snorting behind her, screaming his name into the wind as the riders grew small on the trail. The jail cell was cold, in a way that got into a man's bones. Cole sat on the thin cot, with his back against the stone wall, and his elbows on his knees. The single window was set high, too high to see anything but a square of black sky. No stars tonight, just clouds, heavy and low, the kind that promised more snow before morning. He had not slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her. Ava, standing in the corral, her small hands reaching for him. The sound of her screaming his name into the wind, it played over and over behind his eyes, like a wound that would not close. "I promise you." He'd said those words. He'd meant them with every piece of himself. And then 2 men had put irons on his wrists and led him away from her while she cried. And he'd been able to do nothing. Nothing at all. Cole pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes. He knew this feeling. He knew it the way you know an old scar, the way your fingers find it in the dark without looking. He had felt it once before, years ago, and a lifetime away, kneeling in the mud with his brother's blood on his hands. William. Cole let the memory come because he was too tired to push it back. His little brother, grinning under a soldier's cap that was too big for him. William, who trusted Cole to look out for him. William, who Cole had promised their mother he would bring home safe. He had not brought him home. He'd been 10 feet away when it happened. 10 feet. Close enough to reach out. Not close enough to save him. And Cole had carried that 10 feet with him every day since, like a stone sewn into his chest. He had told himself. He learned his lesson that day. Don't get close. Don't make promises. Don't let anyone lean on you. Because when the moment comes, you will fail them. You always fail them. And here he was again, behind bars. And a little girl was out there in the dark, wondering if the one man who'd said he would stay had lied like all the rest. Maybe I did lie, Cole whispered to the empty cell. Maybe I'm just a man who breaks his promises. The words tasted like poison. He did not know how long he sat there in the dark, drowning in it. But somewhere in the deepest part of the night, he heard the front door of the jailhouse open, heard soft footsteps, heard the deputy grumble something, and then go quiet. And then Martha Bell was standing on the other side of the bars. She was wrapped in a heavy gray shawl, her white hair pulled back, snow melting on her shoulders. She had walked a long way in the cold. Her old eyes found him in the dim lamplight, and they were not soft. They were fierce. "Look at you," she said, sitting in the dark, making a coffin out of a jail cell. Cole didn't lift his head. "Martha, is she safe?" "She's asleep." Finally. Cried herself out, and I sat with her till she went down. Martha stepped closer to the bars. "She asked me if you were coming back. You know what I told her?" Cole said nothing. "I told her yes, because the Cole Mercer I know keeps his word." She gripped the cold iron. "So don't you dare sit in here and prove me a liar to that child. I couldn't save my brother." The words came out raw, torn loose from somewhere deep. "I was right there, Martha, and I couldn't save him. What makes anybody think I can save her?" Martha was quiet a moment. When she spoke, her voice had gone gentle. "Cole, listen to me now. What happened to your brother? That was a terrible thing. A grief no man should carry alone." She leaned close. "But it was one day, one awful day a long time ago. It is not who you are. You've been letting one day write the whole rest of your life." Cole finally lifted his head. "That little girl," Martha went on, "she doesn't need a man who never failed. There's no such thing. She needs a man who won't quit. And I have watched you sit by her bed every single night. I have watched you learn how to braid hair with those big clumsy hands. That's not a man who fails people, Cole. That's a man who stays." Something moved in Cole's chest. Slow, like ice breaking on a spring river. "They're going to have a hearing," he said quietly. "Voss twisted the whole town. Then you untwist it." Martha's eyes blazed. "You've got Ava's journal. You've got Henry Dawson. You've got the truth. And the truth is a stubborn thing. It don't stay buried forever." She reached through the bars and gripped his hand hard. "You did not fail William, and you will not fail Ava. Now stand up." Cole looked at their joined hands, at the strength in that old woman's grip. And slowly, he felt the stone in his chest shift. Not gone. Maybe never gone. But lighter. He stood up. He wiped his face with the back of his free hand and squared his shoulders. And for the first time since the irons had closed on his wrists, the beaten look left his eyes. "All right," he said, and his voice was steady now. "Sure. All right, then I fight. The town hall was not built to be a courtroom, but on that gray morning it became one. Every bench was full. People stood shoulder to shoulder along the walls, stamping snow off their boots, whispering behind their hands. The big iron stove in the corner glowed red, but the room still felt cold. It was the kind of cold that came from too many folks who had chosen to look away, all crowded into one place, waiting to see if they would look away again. Cole sat at a wooden table near the front. His wrists were free now, but he could still feel where the irons had been. He kept his back straight, his eyes forward. Sheriff Thomas Reed stood near the wall, his hat in his hands, his face pulled tight like a man who had swallowed something he could not spit out. At the front of the room, behind a heavy desk, sat the circuit judge, a tired man with spectacles and gray whiskers, come up from the valley on the last road before the pass closed. And then there was Elias Voss. He stood when it was his turn, and he stood the way a man does when he owns the ground beneath his boots. His coat was black wool, brushed clean. His silver watch chain caught the lamplight. He smiled at the judge, warm and easy, like they were old friends sharing a fire. "Your Honor," Voss said, "I am a simple businessman. I've given loans to half the families in this valley. I've kept this town alive through hard winters." He spread his hands, palms open. "And what has this stranger done? He took a grieving mother's child. Clara Whitmore is a troubled woman, yes, but she is that girl's mother. And this man carried her daughter off into the mountains and turned our whole town against itself." A murmur ran through the benches. Some folks nodded. Cole saw shame in their faces even as they nodded, and somehow that was worse. "He speaks of corruption," Voss went on, his voice smooth as riverstone, "of debts and gambling halls. But where is his proof? A child scribbles in a little book?" He chuckled softly, and a few others chuckled with him. "Gentlemen, we cannot tear a good town apart over the wild stories of a frightened little girl." Cole felt the heat rise in his chest. He wanted to stand. He wanted to shout that the man was a snake in a clean coat. But he remembered Martha's words. The truth is a stubborn thing. So he held his tongue and waited for his turn, and he watched Voss build his pretty lie, brick by brick. "Mr. Mercer," the judge said at last, turning his tired eyes to Cole, "have you anything to say for yourself?" Cole stood. His chair scraped against the wood floor. The whole room went quiet. "I found that girl half dead on an old mining trail," he said, and his voice carried to every corner of the room. "Beaten, left in the snow to die. And every single one of you knew something was wrong long before I ever rode into this town." Nobody met his eyes. "I'm not asking you to believe me," Cole said. "I've got a witness. Henry Dawson tried to help that child months ago, and this town let Voss run him into the ground for it. And I've got her own words, written down when she thought nobody in the world would ever read them." He reached toward the table where the small leather journal lay. "That book proves nothing," Voss cut in sharply, the warmth gone from his voice for just a heartbeat. "A child can write anything. Then let her tell it herself." The voice was small, but it rang out clear as a bell in the crowded room. Every head turned. Ava stood in the doorway. She was pale and thin, wrapped in one of Cole's wool coats that swallowed her whole. Martha stood just behind her, one steady hand on her shoulder. Snow dusted the girl's dark hair. In both her small hands, held tight against her chest, like something precious, was her journal. Ava lifted her chin. Her eyes were scared, but they did not look away. "Please," she said into the silence, "I want to tell my story. I want you to hear the truth." The judge looked at the girl for a long moment. Then he nodded, slow and gentle. "Come forward, child." Ava walked. Her boots were too big for her, and they made a soft shuffling sound on the wood floor. Every eye in the room followed her. She climbed onto the chair beside the judge's desk, and her feet did not touch the floor. She looked so small there, so terribly small. Martha found a seat near the front. Cole stayed standing, his hands loose at his sides, ready to catch her if the whole thing broke her apart. Ava opened the journal. Her fingers trembled as she turned the pages. The paper was soft and worn from being held so many times in the dark. "I started writing," she said quietly, "because I thought if I wrote it down, then it was real. And if it was real, then maybe someday somebody would believe me." She found the page she wanted. She took a breath. March. Mama lost the money again. She hit me with the cold side of her hand and told me to stop crying so the neighbors wouldn't hear. I stopped. I got good at stopping. The room did not move. Even the stove seemed to hush its crackling. She turned a page. "I was hungry for 3 days. Mrs. Pearson gave me bread once through her back door. She told me not to tell anyone she did. So I didn't. I never told anyone anything." Cole watched a woman in the third row press a handkerchief to her mouth. Her shoulders shook. That would be Mrs. Pearson then. The bread lady. She was crying now, and she did not try to hide it. I walked past the store, and Mr. Coleman saw the marks on my arm. He looked at me for a second. Then he looked at his boots and went inside. "I understand. Everybody owes Mr. Voss money. Nobody wants to owe him trouble too." At the name, a ripple went through the crowd. Heads turned. Feet shifted. Cole saw Voss's jaw tighten, just a little. That easy smile stretched thin now. Ava kept reading. Her voice did not rise. It did not break. It just kept coming, steady and small, like water finding its way down a mountain. One time, a man with a silver buckle told Mama to stop. He said it loud, right in the street. He said, "That's a child, Clara. That's just a little child." Mama screamed at him. Later she said if he came back, she'd tell the sheriff he tried to hurt us. He never came back. I hope he's okay. He was the only one who ever said stop. Henry Dawson was standing along the back wall. Cole heard him make a sound low in his throat, like a man struck in the chest. Big hands, blacksmith's hands, came up and covered his face. Ava closed the book. She held it against her heart again. She looked up at all of them, at the whole town that had heard her crying through thin walls and had chosen the quiet. "I'm not mad," she said. "I used to be scared all the time, but I'm not mad at you." Her chin wobbled, but she held it. "I just wanted someone to know I was scared. That's all. I just wanted someone to know." The silence that followed was the loudest thing Cole had ever heard. Then, Mrs. Pearson stood up. She was still crying, but her voice was firm. "She came to my door in December," the woman said, "barefoot in the snow. I gave her bread, and I told her to keep it secret because I owed Voss $40, and I was afraid." She wiped her face. "God forgive me. I'm done being afraid. Every word that child said is true." "So is mine," said a man near the stove, rising. "I saw the bruises. I said nothing. Voss holds the note on my farm." Another stood. Then another. A dam had broken, and now the water would not stop. Henry Dawson pushed off the back wall and walked straight up the middle aisle, his boots pounding. "I'm the man with the silver buckle," he said, "and I'll tell this court everything I know about Elias Voss." Voss shot to his feet. "Your Honor, this is a spectacle. These people are frightened. They'll say anything." "Sit down, Mr. Voss," the judge said. And for the first time, Elias Voss did as he was told. The ride home was quiet, but it was a good quiet. Snow had begun to fall again, soft and slow, dusting the pines along the trail. Ava sat in front of Cole on the saddle, wrapped in his heavy coat, her small hands buried in the folds of it. The horse's breath came out in white clouds. The mountains stood tall and still around them, and for the first time in a long time, They did not feel like a lonely place. They felt like home. "Is it really over?" Ava asked. Her voice was small against the wind. Cole tightened his arm around her. "Voss is going where he can't hurt anybody. Not you, not anyone." She was quiet for a moment. Then she leaned back against his chest, and he felt something in her let go. A tightness she had carried so long her body had forgotten how to set it down. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." The days that followed were the best days Cole could remember. He taught her how to feed the chickens, and she named every one of them. There was Biscuit and Pepper, and one mean old hen she called Mrs. Voss, which made Martha laugh so hard she had to sit down. Ava learned to ride the gentle mare, wobbling at first, gripping the reins with white knuckles. But by the end of the week, she was sitting tall, her braid bouncing, calling out to Cole to watch her go. "I'm watching," he said every time. And he was. He never took his eyes off her. At night, the nightmares still came. He would hear her cry out through the wall, and he would go to her, and he would sit on the edge of the bed until her breathing slowed. Sometimes he read to her. Sometimes he just held her hand and said nothing at all. He did not know the right words. He was learning that sometimes there were no right words. There was only staying. Martha came often. She taught Ava how to press wildflowers between the pages of a book and how to make bread rise. She braided the girl's hair each morning, gentle as spring rain, and Ava would close her eyes and hum a little tune under her breath. "She hums now," Martha said one evening, standing beside Cole on the porch. "You notice that? A child only hums when she feels safe." Cole did not trust his voice, so he only nodded. He had spent so many years believing he was cursed to lose the people he loved. He had built his whole life around keeping his distance so it would not hurt. But here was this girl, filling his empty house with names for chickens and humming, and the sound of small boots on the floorboards. And he could not remember why he had ever wanted to be alone. "She's changed you," Martha said. "No," Cole said. "She woke me up. There's a difference." One morning, Ava found her old journal in Cole's saddlebag, where he had kept it safe. She sat by the window with the winter light on her face and opened to a clean page. "What are you writing?" Cole asked. She smiled, a real smile, the kind that reached her eyes. Something happy, for once. Cole thought his chest might crack right open from the fullness of it. Then, on the 8th day, a rider came up the mountain trail. It was Sheriff Reed. His horse was lathered and blowing hard, and the look on his face told Cole everything before the man opened his mouth. Cole set down the coffee he was holding and stepped off the porch into the cold. "Cole," Reed said, swinging down. He would not meet his eyes. "There's been trouble." "What kind of trouble?" Reed pulled off his hat and turned it in his hands. "Clara. She's gone. Broke out sometime in the night. Nobody saw how." He swallowed. "She left a note." Cole felt the ground shift under him. "What note?" Reed handed him a folded paper. Cole's hands did not want to open it, but he did. 2 lines in Clara's shaking hand. "She's still my daughter. I'm coming to take back what's mine." Cole stared at the words until they blurred. Somewhere behind him, through the open door, he could hear Ava humming. The morning came gray and heavy, the sky the color of old iron. Cole had not slept. He had sat up all night by the window, watching the trail, the note still folded in his shirt pocket, where it pressed against his chest like a hot coal. Every sound outside made him rise. Every gust of wind sounded for a moment, like footsteps. By first light he was in the barn, saddling the big bay gelding, the one bred for hard country and harder weather. He worked fast. His hands moved on their own, tightening cinches, checking the rifle in its scabbard, packing dried meat and matches and a coil of rope. He did not let himself think too much. Thinking led to fear, and fear was a thing he could not carry up that mountain. The barn door creaked. Ava stood in the opening, still in her nightgown, her feet bare against the cold dirt. Her hair was loose around her shoulders, the braid Martha had made yesterday come undone in the night. Her eyes were wide and dark, and she was hugging her old journal to her chest like a shield. "You're leaving," she said. Cole set down the saddlebag. "Ava, you'll catch your death out here. Go on inside." She did not move. "You're leaving," she said again, and this time her voice cracked down the middle. "You're going to go, and you're not coming back." He crossed to her and knelt in the straw so his eyes were level with hers. "I have to find your mama before she finds you. You understand? I have to." "That's what my daddy said." Her chin was trembling now, and the words came fast and frightened. "He said he'd be right back. He kissed my head, and he went out the door and he never came back. And Mama said she'd stop. She promised she'd stop, and she never did. And the doctor said he'd come and he didn't. Everybody says they'll come back." A tear slid down her cheek, and she scrubbed it away, angry. "Everybody leaves. Everybody." The words hit Cole harder than any blow he had ever taken. He felt them land in the oldest, most broken part of him, the part that still stood beside a river years ago, holding his brother's cold hand, saying, "Wait. Wait, don't go." He took her small hands in his. They were freezing. He folded them inside his own. "Look at me," he said. She would not, so he waited, gentle, until her eyes came up to his. "I am not those people. I know it don't mean much, hearing a grown man promise. You've heard a lot of promises, and every one of them broke like cheap ice. But I want you to hear this one, and I want you to hold on to it while I'm gone." She held her breath. "I am coming back," Cole said. "You hear me? There is no mountain high enough, no storm mean enough, no distance long enough to keep me from riding back down that trail to you. I would come back from the far side of the world. I am coming home to you, Ava Whitmore. That is not a maybe. That is a fact, hard as this ground we're standing on." Her face crumpled, and she threw her arms around his neck and held on so tight he could feel her whole small body shaking. He wrapped her up and held her there, breathing in the smell of her hair, wildflowers, and wood smoke and home. "Promise," she whispered into his collar. "Promise for real." "I promise," he said. "For real." Martha appeared at the barn door, a blanket already in her hands. She met Cole's eyes over the child's head and gave a single nod. She would keep her safe. She would keep the fire lit and the door barred and the girl inside. Cole pried Ava's arms loose, kissed the top of her head the way a father would, and stood. He handed her to Martha, who wrapped the blanket tight around those thin shoulders. "Watch me," he said, swinging up into the saddle. Ava looked up at him, tears bright on her cheeks. "I'm watching," she said, and Cole turned the bay toward the mountains, toward the gathering dark clouds, and the first hard flakes of snow already beginning to fall, and rode into the wilderness, following the faint, cold trail Clara had left behind. The trail nearly vanished twice. The snow came sideways now, thick and blinding, and the wind screamed through the pines like something alive and hurting. But Cole knew this country the way he knew the lines on his own hands. He read what the mountain would not hide. A broken branch here, a scuff of a heel there, half filled with snow, but not yet gone. Clara was moving slow. She was tired. She was hurt in some way, though whether in body or in soul he could not tell. He found the mining camp near dusk, when the light had gone thin and blue, and the cold had crawled all the way into his bones. It sat in a hollow between two ridges, a scatter of collapsed shacks, and one leaning cabin with a crooked stovepipe. A thread of smoke rose from it, bent flat by the wind. Cole reined the bay to a stop and sat a long moment, watching. Then he swung down, tied the horse in the lee of a rock wall, and walked to the cabin door with his hands empty and open at his sides. He pushed it open. Clara sat on the dirt floor near a small, dying fire, her knees pulled up to her chest, her back against the wall. She looked up at him, and Cole braced himself for a knife, a scream, a lie. He got none of those things. He got a face so hollowed out by shame that it stopped him cold in the doorway. She was thinner than he remembered. Her coat was torn, her lips cracked, her hair matted with snow. But it was her eyes that struck him. They were the eyes of a person who had already been to the bottom of herself, and found nothing there worth saving. "You came to kill me," she said. Her voice was flat and empty. "Go on then. I won't fight you. I'm tired of fighting." Cole stepped inside and shut the door against the wind. He crossed the room slow, the way a man moves near a spooked animal, and he lowered himself down to sit across the fire from her. He did not reach for a weapon. He set his hands on his knees where she could see them. "I didn't come to kill you, Clara," he said. She let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "Then you're a fool. Everyone else in that valley would have done it by now. Maybe they'd have been right." The fire popped. Cole fed it a scrap of broken board and watched the flame climb. "That note you left," he said quietly. "You said I'd fail her. Like I failed my brother." Clara flinched. "I shouldn't have wrote that." "No," he said. "But it did its work. Wrote in my chest the whole way up this mountain." He looked at her across the little fire. "So, I'll ask you plain. Did you come up here to take her? Or did you come up here to disappear?" For a long time Clara said nothing. The wind battered the walls. And then, slow, like something breaking loose inside her, she began to cry. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind. The kind that has been held back so long, it has forgotten how to be anything but silent. "I can't take her," she whispered. "God help me. I know I can't. I wrote that note because I couldn't stand for you to have what I threw away. That's the ugly truth of it. I was jealous of a good man loving my own child." Cole said nothing. He only waited, the way Martha had taught him. He let the silence hold her up. "After Ava's daddy died," Clara went on, her voice shaking, "I couldn't breathe. The grief was like drowning. Every single day. And the cards, the whiskey, they made the drowning stop. Just for a while. Just long enough." She pressed the heels of her hands against her eyes. "And then I owed Voss. And then I owed him more. And Ava would look at me with those eyes, so much like her daddy's, and I hated her for it. I hated my own baby for reminding me what I lost." Her hands dropped. She looked at Cole, and there was no more hiding in her. "I hit her," Clara said. "I lost myself, and I hit her, and I left her in the cold. My little girl." Her breath broke. "There's no forgiving that. I don't want forgiving. I just want to stop pretending it was anybody's fault but mine." She wiped her face and sat up straighter, and something steadier came into her voice. "I'll go back with you," she said. "I'll face the sheriff. I'll face all of it. Whatever they do to me, I've earned it. But I won't run anymore. I'm done running from what I did to Ava." Cole watched the fire a long while before he spoke. When he did, his voice came out low and rough, like a thing he had kept buried and had to dig up with his bare hands. "His name was William," he said. "My brother. Younger than me by 6 years. He followed me into the army the way he followed me everywhere his whole life. Thought I hung the moon." A tired smile crossed Cole's face, then faded. "I told our mother I'd look after him. Swore it. Standing on the porch the morning we left. I swore it to her." Clara had gone still across the fire. "There was a mission," Cole said. "Bad country, bad orders. I should have spoke up. I saw it going wrong, and I stayed quiet because that's what a soldier does. And when the shooting started, William was on the far side of the creek from me. Too far." He swallowed. "I couldn't get to him. I tried. God knows I tried. But the water was high, and the fire was heavy, and by the time I crossed, he was already gone." The wind pressed against the cabin like a hand. "I've carried that 18 years," Cole said. Told myself I was cursed, that every soul who leaned on me would get taken, so I stopped letting anybody lean. He looked up at her. That's why I understand more than you think, Clara. Grief will make a stranger out of you. It'll turn you into somebody you don't recognize in the glass. Clara's eyes shone wet in the firelight. But you didn't hurt anybody, she said. You ran from people so you wouldn't hurt them. I hurt the one person I was supposed to shield with my own body. That's true, Cole said. He did not soften it. He did not look away. You did. And Ava carries the marks of it. She flinches at loud sounds. She hides food under her pillow like she thinks the next meal won't come. She wakes screaming most nights. Clara made a broken sound and bent forward over her knees, as if the words were a weight laid across her back. I'm not telling you that to punish you, Cole said. You've done plenty of that yourself. I'm telling you because you asked me not to forgive you. And I want you to understand something. He leaned toward the fire, his weathered face lit orange and gold. Forgiving you was never mine to give. That belongs to Ava, if she ever chooses it. And it'll be years in the coming. Maybe never. Clara nodded against her knees, still shaking. But here's what I've learned, Cole went on. Sitting by that little girl's bed night after night, waiting for her to open her eyes. Forgiving somebody don't wipe the slate clean. It don't undo one single blow. The harm stays. It's real, and it's hers to heal from in her own time. He drew a slow breath. What forgiving does is this. It gives a person room to become somebody different. It don't erase what you were. It just stops chaining you to it. Clara lifted her head. Her face was wrecked, but there was something new sitting behind her eyes now. Not peace. Cole did not think she would find peace for a long while, if ever. But something steadier. A kind of clear-eyed resolve. The look of a person who has stopped lying and found the ground firmer than they feared. Then, I'll spend whatever's left of me becoming different, she said. I won't ask Ava to forgive me. I won't ask for her back. I lost that right. Her voice cracked but held. But I can stop being the thing that scares her. I can face the sheriff and tell the truth and take what's coming. And if a day ever comes, she wants to look me in the eye. I want to be somebody she isn't ashamed to find. That's a start, Cole said quietly. Clara wiped her face with the torn sleeve of her coat and squared her thin shoulders. At first light, she said, I'll go back with you. No fighting, no running. Whatever they hand me, I'll carry it. Cole looked at her across the dying fire, this broken woman choosing at last the hardest road there was. And he understood then, all the way down, that a person did not have to be saved from every consequence to be worth saving at all. The storm had blown itself out by morning, leaving the mountains washed clean and white. Cole rode down the last stretch of trail with Clara beside him, her wrists loose in a rope she had not once fought against. She kept her eyes forward, her back straight, carrying her fear the way a person carries something heavy they have finally decided to set down at the end of the road. The ranch came into view through the pines. Smoke curled thin from the chimney. And there, small against the porch rail, was a figure Cole would have known anywhere. Ava. She stood wrapped in one of Martha's shawls, too big for her, dragging near her ankles. Even from a distance, Cole could see how still she held herself, the stillness of a child bracing for the worst. Her eyes found him. Then, they found Clara, and Cole watched the girl go rigid. Martha appeared in the doorway behind her, one weathered hand settling gentle on Ava's shoulder. But Ava did not lean into it. She stared at her mother the way a person stares at a snake in the grass, frozen, hardly breathing. Cole swung down from the saddle before he reached them. He handed Clara off to the sheriff's man, who had ridden up from town at first light, a quiet young deputy who took her arm without roughness. Clara did not look toward the porch. She could not. She kept her face down, and Cole understood that too. She was giving Ava the one thing she could still give: distance. Take her on, Cole said low. I'll bring her word when there's word to bring. The deputy nodded and led Clara toward the wagon. She went without a sound. Then Cole turned and walked to the porch, and by the time his boot hit the first step, Ava had already started shaking. You came back, she whispered. Course I did. He crouched down in front of her so their eyes were level. Behind him, he heard the wagon creak and roll away, taking Clara down the long road toward town, but he did not turn to watch it go. He kept his eyes on the girl. I told you, I'd be back before the snow melted off the barn roof. Look there. He tipped his head. Still melting. I beat it. But Ava did not smile. Her small chin trembled, and the words came pouring out of her all at once, the way water breaks through a dam. I thought you might not. I thought maybe you'd go and get her, and remember she's my mama, and I'm just the girl you found. And you'd give me back, or you'd stay gone, and I'd have to wait, and nobody would come, like before. She was crying now, hard, her thin shoulders heaving. I always have to wait for somebody and nobody comes. Cole felt the old ache rise in his chest, the one that had lived there 18 years. But it did not pull him down this time. It steadied him. It told him exactly what to do. He reached out slow and took both her cold hands in his big rough ones. Ava, he said, look at me now. I need you to hear this all the way down. She lifted her wet eyes to his. I did not go get your mama to give you back to anybody, he said. I went to make sure the truth got told. That's all. She's answering for what she did, and that's hers to answer for, not yours. He tightened his hands around hers. You are not the girl I found. You stopped being that a long time ago. You are the girl I chose. Her breath caught. You hear me? Cole said. I chose you, not because I had to, because I wanted to, and I'm going to keep choosing you. Tomorrow, and the day after that, and every ordinary morning that comes, when nothing's on fire and there's just chores and breakfast and the same old sky. I'll choose you then too. That's what family is. It ain't blood. It's somebody deciding over and over that you're worth staying for. Ava threw her arms around his neck and held on like she was drowning, and Cole held her right back. The seasons turned the way they always did in the high country, slow and sure, with no mind for the troubles of men. Winter loosened its grip. The snow drew back up the mountainsides in ragged patches, and the creeks ran fat and loud with the melt. Green crept back into the valley, timid at first, then bold, until the meadows below Cole's ranch were thick with new grass, and the wild blue flowers Martha called mountain bells. And the town of Silver Hollow began to breathe again. It happened slow, the way healing always does. First it was small things. A family that had not set foot in the general store in a year came walking in with their heads up, paying cash for flour and sugar without flinching at the price. Then it was bigger things. The boards came down off the windows of the old gambling hall on Main Street, and in its place, a man named Purdy opened a proper eating house, with checkered curtains and pie in the window, and the smell of coffee drifting into the road. Elias Voss was gone. That was the root of all of it. He sat now in a territorial prison 2 days' ride to the east, awaiting a trial that everyone knew would not go his way. The ledgers Cole had helped drag into the light told a story too plain to argue with. Page after page of debts, written crooked, interest piled on interest, families squeezed dry, so one man could sit fat behind a polished desk and call himself respectable. The bank had new hands on it now. Thomas Reed had seen to that, the sheriff standing a little taller these days, like a man who had finally remembered what his badge was for. The debts Voss had built on lies were struck through, one by one. Some folks wept when they got the word. Grown men who had not slept easy in years. Henry Dawson kept his forge going hot from dawn to dusk, and folks said he whistled while he worked now, which he had not done in a long, long while. Up at the ranch, Ava grew. She grew the way children do when the fear finally lets go of them, all at once and everywhere. She got taller. Her cheeks filled out from Martha's cooking, and the flinch that used to jump into her shoulders whenever a door slammed or a voice rose, that faded too, a little more each week, until Cole realized one evening, at supper, that he could not remember the last time he had seen it. But something else grew that spring. Something bigger than one girl and one lonely man. It started with a knock on the door. A family stood on the porch. A mother, thin and hollow-eyed, and 3 children clinging to her skirts, and a wagon behind them with everything they owned piled in a heap no bigger than a haystack. Voss had taken their farm before his fall. They had nowhere left to go. Cole looked at them a long moment. Then he stepped back and opened the door wide. "Come on in out of the cold," he said. "There's room." There was always room after that. Word spread through the valley, the way word does. Up at the Mercer place, they don't turn folks away. And so they came. Families burned out by bad luck and broken systems. Children with no one left to raise them, the way Ava had once had no one. Cole cleared out the big, empty bunkhouse he had not used since his cattle drive days, and hung new doors and cut new windows to let the light in. He and Henry built beds through the long summer evenings, the ring of hammer on wood carrying clear across the meadow. Martha came and stayed for good, doctoring scraped knees and fevers and broken hearts alike, her herbs lined up on a shelf where the children could not reach them. And Cole Mercer, who had spent 18 years believing he was cursed to fail the ones who leaned on him, found his ranch filling up with the very people the world had thrown away. He did not think of it as charity. He never once used that word. He thought of it as staying, choosing, over and over, that these folks were worth staying for. The valley took to calling it something. Cole never named it himself, but the name stuck all the same, passed mouth to mouth from one grateful family to the next. The Mercy Ranch, they called it. A place where the lost could come and be seen at last. The garden was Ava's favorite place in all the world. She learned that about herself slowly, the way she was learning so many things now. She learned it in the morning, when the dew was still cool on the leaves, and Martha would call her name from the back porch. She learned it with dirt under her fingernails, and the sun warm on the back of her neck. She learned it watching things grow that she had planted with her own 2 hands. "Careful with the beans, child," Martha said one morning, her old knees folded beneath her on a flat cushion. "You want to loosen the soil around them, not tug the roots. Roots are how a plant holds on. You pull too hard, you undo everything." Ava nodded and dug her fingers gentle into the earth, just the way Martha showed her. The little green shoots stood up straighter, like they were glad for the room. She thought about that, about roots and holding on. There had been a time, not so long ago, when Ava had no roots at all. She had blown through the world like a seed with nowhere to land. Now she had a garden. She had a room with a real bed and a window that looked out on the mountains. She had a place at the supper table that was hers and nobody else's, every single night. "Martha," she said, "do you think plants know when somebody loves them?" Martha laughed, soft and warm as bread. "I surely do, child. I think everything living knows. You water a thing and tend it and speak kind to it, and it grows toward you, same as people." Ava tucked that away in her heart, where she kept the good things now. The days had a shape to them, and the shape was good. Mornings in the garden with Martha. Then the long walk down the valley road to the little schoolhouse in Silver Hollow, where Miss Prentice taught her letters and sums and read stories aloud after the noon meal. Ava was ahead of most of the children her age, on account of all the reading and writing she had taught herself in the dark years. But she never lorded it over anyone. She helped the little ones with their spelling instead, patient as Martha was with the beans. She had friends now. That was the strangest, sweetest thing of all. There was a girl named Susanna, whose family lived in the bunkhouse, and the two of them were near inseparable. They caught frogs in the creek and braided each other's hair and whispered secrets under the quilts at night. Ava had never had a secret that was happy before. Now she had a whole collection of them. In the afternoons, Cole taught her to ride. She sat tall in the saddle now, no longer clutching the horn with white knuckles the way she had that first shaking day. The mare, a gentle old thing named Biscuit, seemed to understand her. Cole rode alongside, quiet and steady. And sometimes they did not talk at all. They just rode, the two of them, out to where the meadow met the trees, and that silence was the fullest silence Ava had ever known. "You're doing fine," Cole would say. And that was enough. That was everything. One evening, after supper, after the dishes were done, and the little ones were tucked in, and the whole ranch had gone quiet under the first stars, Ava climbed the ladder to the loft where she kept her things. She took out the old journal. It was worn soft at the corners now, the leather gone dark with handling. She had not opened it in a long while. She sat on the edge of her bed and turned the pages slow, and there it all was. The old her. The scared her. The girl who wrote in the dark so somebody, someday, might know she had been real. She read the old words without crying. That surprised her. They felt like they belonged to a different girl, one she remembered kindly, but did not have to be anymore. Then she turned to a fresh page, clean and waiting. She dipped her pen and began to write. She wrote about the garden and the beans standing up straight in their loosened soil. She wrote about Susanna and the frogs in the creek. She wrote about Martha's laugh and Cole's quiet, and the way Biscuit's ears turned back to listen when she talked. She wrote about being seen. And this time, every single word was a happy one. The years have a way of moving quiet, like water over stones. You do not notice them wearing you smooth until one day you catch your reflection and see how much has changed. Cole sat on the porch in the golden light of a summer evening and thought about that. The ranch was not quiet anymore. It had not been quiet in a long time. Where there had once been only the wind and the lonely creak of an empty house, there was now the sound of living. Children laughing in the yard, chickens fussing in their coop, wagons rolling up the valley road bringing neighbors to supper, the way they did most Sundays now. Cole had built more rooms onto the house, then a second bunkhouse, then a proper barn with a loft big enough for a dozen sleeping children who had nowhere else to go. Folks came from all over the valley and beyond, families broken by hard luck and hard men, and they found here what Cole had once found in a scared little girl beside a mountain trail. They found a place to land. He watched Ava now, out by the corral fence. She was near 16, tall and easy in her own skin, the way she had never been as a child. Her dark hair was tied back with a bit of blue ribbon, and she was laughing at something one of the younger boys had said. Her whole face lit up with it. She had a way with the little ones. She was patient, as Martha had been, gentle as the earth she still loved to dig her hands into. Martha was gone now. She had passed 2 winters back, quiet in her sleep at the good age of 74, and they had buried her up on the hill, where she could look out over the valley she had healed for so many years. Ava had cried for days. But then she had planted a garden by Martha's grave, beans and squash and bright yellow sunflowers, and every spring she tended it like a promise. "Roots," Ava had told Cole once, kneeling in that dirt. "Martha taught me roots are how a thing holds on." She had roots now, deep ones. Cole had made sure of that. He remembered the day the court had finally signed the papers, making it plain and legal that Ava Whitmore was his to raise. She had run into his arms and held on so tight he could feel her heart beating against his ribs. Clara had signed the papers too, from the place where she was getting well. She wrote Ava letters now, real ones, honest ones, and Ava wrote back. It was not perfect, but it was true. And true was enough. "You look like a man doing a lot of thinking," a voice said. Cole turned. It was Jed Harmon, a neighbor from down the road, come early for supper with his hat in his hands. He settled onto the porch step and looked out at the yard, at all the running and laughing and living. "Sure is something you built here, Cole," Jed said. "All these young ones. All this family." He was quiet a moment. Then he asked the thing folks always asked, sooner or later. "Can I ask you something, and you won't take it wrong?" "Ask it." "That girl there." Jed nodded toward Ava. "The first one. The one who started it all. She wasn't yours. Not blood, I mean. You risked everything for her. Your ranch. Your good name. I heard they even had you in jail a spell." He shook his head. "Why? Why do all that for a child who wasn't yours?" Cole watched Ava lift a small boy up onto the fence rail so he could see the horses. The boy shrieked with joy, and Ava laughed, and the sound of it carried across the whole golden yard. Cole felt something warm and settled fill his chest, the way it did most every day now. "She was mine," he said. Jed frowned. "But you just said—" "She became mine," Cole said, "the moment I decided not to walk away." He said it simple. He said it plain, because it was the plainest, truest thing he knew. Later that evening, after the wagons had rolled home and the little ones had been tucked into their beds, Ava climbed the stairs to her room with a lamp glowing soft in her hand. The house had gone quiet in the good way, the kind of quiet that comes after a full day, when everyone is fed and safe and sleeping. She could hear the wind moving through the pines outside her window, gentle as a lullaby. On her desk sat a wooden box. Cole had made it for her years ago, back when her hands were still small and her nights were still full of bad dreams. He had carved it from cedar, sanded it smooth, and fixed a little brass latch to the front. The wood had gone dark and rich with time. She ran her fingers over the lid the way she had 1,000 times. And she thought about how many things that box had held over the years. Feathers, dried flowers from Martha's garden, a river stone shaped like a heart. But tonight, she held the most important thing of all, her old journal. The leather was cracked now, soft as an old glove. The pages had gone yellow at the edges. She opened it careful, the way you handle something that matters. And she looked down at the words a frightened little girl had once written by candlelight, hiding beneath a thin blanket, praying nobody would hear the scratch of her pencil. She read the early pages slow. The hunger, the cold, the nights she had lain awake listening for her mother's footsteps, never knowing if they would bring anger or tears. The times she had gone to town and watched people look right through her, like she was made of glass, like she was nothing at all. That child had been so alone. Ava's throat went tight, but she did not cry. Not the way she used to, because she knew now how the story turned out. She knew about the man with the tired eyes and the strong arms who had carried her through a storm and never once let go. She knew about Martha's warm hands and gentle voice. She knew about mornings full of biscuits and evenings full of stories, and a whole crowd of little ones who called this place home. The scared girl in these pages did not know any of that yet. She was still waiting, still hoping, still writing down the truth in case someday, somehow, somebody might finally believe her. "You were right to keep hoping," Ava whispered to that girl. Somebody came. She turned the pages forward, past the dark ones, to the entries that came after. These were written in a steadier hand. Sunflowers and horses. First rides through the high meadow. The day the court papers were signed. The day she had learned to write her name as Ava Mercer and had cried happy tears all over the ink. The bad pages and the good pages, all bound up together in the same little book. That was the truth of it, she thought. You could not have one without the other. The dark had made the light shine all the brighter. She heard the porch door, and knew Cole had gone out to watch the sun go down, the way he liked to. She picked up her pencil. For a long moment she just held it, thinking of all the words this journal had carried. Then she turned to the front, to the worn leather cover, and she wrote the title she had been saving her whole life. The Day Someone Finally Saw Me. She set the pencil down. She closed the book gentle and laid it in the cedar box, and she shut the lid with a soft click that felt like the end of one story and the start of another. Then she carried the box downstairs and out onto the porch. Cole was there, sitting easy in his chair, hat off, watching the last of the light spill gold and rose across the valley he had spent his life protecting. He looked over as she settled beside him. He looked lighter than he used to. The guilt he had carried so long, the weight of a brother he could not save, had finally lifted somewhere along these good and busy years. He was not running anymore. He was here. He was home. Ava leaned her head against his shoulder. Together, they watched the sun go down. I hope you like this story. Please share what's your favorite part of the story and where in the world you are watching from. Have a wonderful day.